Well, once again, ladies and gentlemen, greetings and salutations. We are back again for another review podcast, this time looking at Quentin Tarantino's latest, how should I put it, action, historical, not really historical though, not quite action, but it has a lot of action, a Tarantino film, in other words. Django Unchained. The D is silent. Of course, starring Jamie Foxx, Christoph Waltz, and Leonardo DiCaprio. And Samuel L. Jackson, who is, I think, not... You don't get the sense he's in this as much as he is from the previews. I mean, he's in the previews, but you think he's going to play another one of those, like, small, hey, look, it's Samuel L. Jackson parts. No, he's actually, he's in here a good chunk of the movie. And I really like to say this is a really good one. Go out and see this movie. If you were disappointed by Inglourious Basterds, that it didn't have the action that you wanted in it, I think Quentin Tarantino has heard that response, or had that sunk in and was like, yeah, I should have delivered more action. And here he goes. Plenty of shootouts in this one. Not an overindulgence. Not a true action film, but my God. There's a couple scenes in here where it's the shootout in the plantation, which isn't the final, by the way. And by the way, there's going to be some spoilers in here, but I try to resist all the spoilers, although I am going to go with the assumption that if you're watching this review, you've seen the movie. Which, I know that seems kind of odd, considering your first time watching my review, but it seems today that most people, when they go look for reviews, they're looking to see what other people have thought of the same movie they saw, rather than a recommendation whether to see it or not. However, with that being said, if you are looking for a recommendation, yeah, go see this movie now. There's no reason not to. The only thing that might hold you back is its runtime is 165 minutes, which means out of the past 3 movies I've seen, not one of them has been under 2.5 hours long. Remember when movies used to be an hour and a half and that was it? Yeah, the last 3 movies it was Les Mis, this, and The Hobbit. Each one well over 2.5 hours, if not 3 or more. So, it's another long one. When I finally go see Zero Dark 30, I don't know how long that's going to be. But if it's like an hour and a half, that movie's going to fly by real fast. So where to go with this? It's got all the classic Tarantino stuff in there. Performance-wise, Jamie Foxx does a really good job. He kind of really has to make this transformation a bit from kind of... I hate to use the term ignorant slave, but he's just not aware of about being anything other than a slave at first, but he's got that spirit to him. And you see him from where he first appears, he's kind of been broken as a man because he's from his enslavement. But by the end of the movie, he's become the man with no name, basically, referencing, of course, Clint Eastwood's basically what you think of a Western character. I would name him, but he doesn't have a name, hence the man with no name. From, of course, The Good and Bad, the Ugly, a fistful of dollars. And for a few dollars more. Which is, that's along the same... It's... not token of movies, style of movies which Tarantino is paying homage to with this film. That's kind of what... Tarantino has this thing. He's original and yet very unoriginal at the same time. He's one of those directors that is just trying to recreate the films he loved growing up. And in this case, we had Pulp Fiction, which looked at kind of more of a gangster genre. You had Kill Bill, which is kind of more of a callback to the martial arts films that he grew up going with. Go both, with the Pai Mei scenes of where you have an older setting versus a more modern revenge martial arts style film. You've got Inglourious Basterds, which is sort of a callback to war films. And then, of course, you have Django Unchained, a callback to the spaghetti westerns, which were westerns that were made by Italians. Not Italian Americans, genuine Italians. Starring such Italian actors as Franco Nero, who, if you don't know who that is, which the person behind me didn't, Franco Nero played Django in the 1960s Django. Yes, this is a lot of, I think, modern audiences are not aware that there is, in the 60s, Django was like considered one of the most violent films made when it came out. Now it probably wouldn't face too many people, but it was a very violent Western film made by Italians with an Italian crew, Italian actors. I think there might have been a few Western actors. It's been a while since I've seen it, and I've never sat through and watched the entirety of Django. I remember watching like parts of it. I've probably seen 40% of the movie. Just being honest here. So I might have missed it. Plus, I'm not as up on my 60s actors. Anyway, so he makes a wonderful little cameo in being this bartender. And you see the scene in the trailer where Django's sitting at a bar and Franco Nero is there, and he's like, and what is your name? He's like, it's Django. He's like, can you spell that? And he goes, DJN. I can't spell it. What's that say of me? DGANGO. The D is silent. And they don't show this part in the trailer, but Franco Nero goes, it's like, I know. Kind of just waltzes off. And I'm kind of wondering, because I've heard that some people have said that they're saying that this movie is in canon with the other two Django movies. There's two official Django movies, and then at least 30 movies that were unofficial sequels. And they're saying this one is in actual canon with it. And I'm kind of wondering if that's what they mean, because some people are saying, I heard some people, actually it was on Radiodrome, Brad Josen's podcast. Not him, but his co-host Josh there was going. Apparently he heard that Tarantino had said that this Django is the same Django from the 60s movie, which would make sense because one's black, one's white. Unless they're just kind of saying that I could kind of see how you could work that in that, this one, Fox, Django finds his wife, and in the sequel, I think that the coffin he's carrying around is his wife's, like, that's his wife in the coffin or something. And yeah, if you want to ignore the race thing, you could probably do it. It might work, but I'm kind of wondering if that is supposed to be like Django now older, and he's just like there hanging out at a bar, like betting on slaves beating the crap out of each other, which is what they're doing in that scene. And you know what? You can get around the whole age thing. Well, it's 30 because the way people age now, we're much healthier for much longer. Look at a picture of somebody in their 60s from the 1960s, and they look old. They look 20 years older. They look like people in their 80s now. So even though it's supposed to take place like 30 years later, considering how people aged, you could probably make the argument that maybe, I don't know when the other Django movies took place, but you could make the argument that that's the same Django. It's now just, it was the 60s. You could say it's only half the time has passed. And he's not, I forgot how old he is now, but you can make that argument, which is something that a lot of people don't try to bring up with movies, especially if they take place in past time periods. Well, the guy's 70 years old. He can't play somebody younger. He can't play a 50-year-old. Yeah, he could play a 50-year-old back then, because people looked a lot older back then when they aged. It's kind of the same argument I've actually made when people did a Spider-Man review. My old problems with the more traditional Aunt May is she doesn't look like a modern-day older aunt. In the 60s, an older aunt in her early 60s or late 50s would look like that. But now, not so much, which is why I was happy when they brought that's why the Sam Raimi ones always threw me off, because she's too much like a grandma because she looks like she's in her 80s. When the original Aunt May was only supposed to be maybe in her early 60s, if not late 50s, and that's how people looked back then, back in the 60s. If you got to your late 50s, early 60s, you looked like you were in your 70s, 80s today. But I digress, big time, because it's time to get into what I thought of the different performances, and there's a lot. You see so many different actors like popping up throughout this movie. Like, oh shit, it's Don Johnson. Yeah, Don Johnson's in this movie. Fucking Nash Bridges is in this movie. He's basically playing, he's Colonel Sanders. He looks exactly like Colonel Sanders. He's playing, there's like, earlier in the movie when kind of Django and Christoph Waltz character have teamed up. I'll get into their performance just because I brought up Don Johnson. We'll talk about Don Johnson. It's like when they go hunting down the Brittle Brothers. They're the ones. Apparently he had hired them at his plantation, and so they run into him, and it's a hilarious performance, especially once you know it's Don Johnson. And then he later on, after they kill the Brittle Brothers, he can't do anything there because they're legal bounty hunters acting under the court's authority, so he's not going to start anything now. Instead, he has this scene where he's basically gets the guys in hoods, and they're going to go and kill Django because he's a black guy that killed 3 white guys. So they're going to unofficially kill him to make sure a message is sent. And of course, Django and Dr. Schultz plan on anticipate this and kind of set up a booby trap. But there's a hilarious scene before that where they're sitting. Actually, they start to charge, and then it cuts back to like 20 minutes earlier. And I want to know how they thought of this, like this having this scene where they all have like the old style hoods, which are just like sleeping bags with 2 eye holes cut out. And like they're complaining about like, oh, they can't really see that well, and other guys are kind of like were ripping it like, oh, I broke mine. They're making all these arguments and complaints, and I wonder if that could have sprung from this Tarantino thinking, man, those things must have been a really pain in the ass to look at. I wonder if that ever got brought up before they started the attacks. And it's a great scene. Jonah Hill makes an appearance in there, and I love it. Even in the credits, like they put him in like the main credits, and he's credited as like Masked Man #2 or something along those lines. Like, I'm not talking about the scroll credits, I'm only talking about the big flash credits. But yeah, Don Johnson is great in his role. He's not as good as, of course, Leonardo DiCaprio, who plays Calvin Candy, the kind of I guess he's the main antagonist. He might not be the main antagonist. It's a Tarantino film, so of course it's gonna be complex. Oh, before backtrack this once, well, not backtrack, but put that on pause for 1 second. One thing I have to say about this Tarantino film over all the others, this one is actually showing us stuff in order. Chronologically, this movie just goes through. I mean, there is that scene I talked about earlier where they start the attack and then they flash back 20 minutes. It's if you've seen other Tarantino movies, you know how he jumps constantly in time. That is not too bad. That's just a flashback. That scene I would talk about, that's more of a traditional flashback. And that's more of the oddity. Not the oddity, but it's not every scene's like that. Basically, the movie is told the first scenes are first, and it progresses in chronological order. Which for Tarantino, that's different. I wonder if he's gotten tired of writing like that, or if just he wrote the story and didn't see a good way to chop this one up. Yeah, I guess it depends on how he writes. I think some of the other movies he's done, he's wrote them traditionally, and then he's kind of moved the different scenes around. I think that's how he did Kill Bill. But I wonder for this one he wrote it out and this was like, I tried to move this around and this doesn't make sense. Maybe I should just shoot this. I don't have to tell my films in this weird time order thing. Which I'm happy for, because it makes the film a lot easier. I apologize for my ice chewing there, but what are you gonna do? Ah, yes. And then back to our main actors. So Leonardo DiCaprio plays a wonderful, like, crazed plantation owner, basically. You can tell the guy's a sadist, and he just gives a great performance. You don't know where this character or this actor is going to do next, and that's actually both. And it keeps the audience on edge, because even the audience, like, we don't know what this guy is going to do. He so changes. And this is where you get into some major spoiler territory. For those of you that have seen the movie, yeah, this is, I'm sure, what people want to talk about. So stop now if you don't want spoilers, and I encourage you, really. I think you've heard a little bit about what I've talked about right now. Really, if you haven't seen the movie, I really urge you to stop, go see the movie, pause this, come back, make note of the time, how many minutes in. I think we're at 16 minutes in, right? So we're at 16 minutes. Stop, go see the movie, come back, and then skip the first 16 minutes and start from here on out. Alright? Good. So when the person who still hasn't seen it is listening, you're gonna regret this. Alright, so Candy is told, basically, from Samuel L. Jackson's character, that no, these guys are here playing the Schultz and Django. They're playing Candy to just try to purchase his wife, who they have a rather ingenious plan to purchase her. They figure this out, and he kind of goes nuts, has them, like, pointed the guns at him, all this stuff. Kind of go crazy, and you kind of wonder for a second, like, why are they going off if they're trying to purchase? You figure maybe some sort of confrontation, but he goes nuts. He's cutting off this, like, old slave skull that he has, like, apparently an old servant, going on this crazy lecture, and he starts shouting at him and all this stuff, and you think he's just gonna kill these guys. Instead, he, like, just decides to have them pay. They were gonna purchase another slave that was like a fighting slave, a Mandingo fighter, and that was the excuse. They were gonna purchase him for like 12,000, but they weren't. They were gonna purchase Hilda, Django's wife, and then probably from what I gather, I mean, they don't outright say it was. They were going to say, well, it's a lot of money. This time my lawyer draw it up. It probably just pay for her, the cheaper slave, and then just never come back to purchase the other slave. So it would be all legit. But instead, he just has them, like, purchase Brunhilde for $12,000, which is a lot of money back then, mind you. But you gotta get the sense. You get the sense that they were, because they, like, had one. They went on one bounty that was like $7,000. So I got the sense that they actually did have the money if they wanted to pay full price, like pay that. They could have legitimately purchased her, or purchased both slaves. In fact, I don't know why they probably. Well, I guess they're being cheap. But then he just has, like, them go through the deal, and it's just, well, he's even, like, writing up the receipts for them and all that. Like, he's not even flat out like bullying them. You're kind of, like, thrown off, like, what the hell is this? Wow, I don't know what this character's gonna do. And then he has it to where he has them sell the deal, and he's just, like, gonna let him go. And he's, like, gets all, like, crazy about having Schultz shake his hand, and then that's, of course, when Schultz, unfortunately, you want me to shake my. They had this, like, whole, like, 2-minute argument about shaking hands. Well, if you don't shake my hand, all this legal stuff means nothing. I'll have her shot right away. And so Schultz just, like, decides as he approaches, he uses his little trick gun and just shoots him. It's like, sorry, couldn't resist. And that's when he dies. And you really don't want to see Schultz die. He's probably the most likable character in the movie. You want to see him live more than anyone else. He's the most entertaining character to follow. But no, he bites it. And that's, of course, where you start off with this insane gunfight in there, where it does get to almost Kill Bill levels, where Django's just taking out these guys left and right. And they had, and then eventually, it's like waves and waves of these handlers. I didn't even realize there were that many people on there. How many people do you have sitting around, like, in the outlying property? But, oh yeah, Walter Goggins is there too, but I digress. So, we have that. Chris, and the fact that you really are like, oh no, not him! Just goes to show Christoph Waltz, once again, has a great performance. The guy's got a wonderful screen presence, especially for someone that's only been in how many major movies? Not too many. I mean, the guy's in his, like, 50s. And looking at his list, I haven't seen Three Musketeers, I'm surprised. But, yeah, even, like, in the Green Hornet, which, for, like, most people lambast the Green Hornet, a lot of the people that lambast the Green Hornet have at least said that the villain was entertaining as hell. And lo and behold, it's him. So it just goes to show, man, Tarantino found really great with casting, really great with finding people, and then making them major stars. And you can tell that the role of Schultz was written with Christoph Waltz inside, because so much of everything kind of revolves around this doctor being German. Christoph Waltz German, so he doesn't have to hide his accent. Although it was kind of weird, you didn't pick up the German accent. He doesn't have a very thick, well, I should say Austrian accent, since he was born and raised in Vienna. But you didn't really detect the accent at all that much. I mean, you could kind of at points, which was kind of impressive on his part. But he had to hear it as well. I guess I'm not sure if he maybe did that as a character, because you've heard you've heard his thicker German accent before. I wonder if he purposely did that as an actor to kind of make it like, okay, here's someone who was from Germany, but is now been living in the States for long, so he's kind of losing his accent a bit. But still, wonderful performance, incredibly entertaining to watch the guy. He is both funny and exciting to watch how the guy operates. You can see he's a smart character. He just struts the line every time, up until that very end. He's an interesting character in that he always bends the law, but he never breaks it, because he kind of relies on always using the law as an excuse that he's in the right. Up until when he just shoots Candy at the end there. And I guess that kind of shows where, okay, he finally broke, I guess, his unsaid golden rule with him is, never go outside the boundaries of the law, and then you'll live. And he, lo and behold, goes outside the boundaries of the law, and he immediately gets shot. Because even their whole scheme was that was completely legal. They were going to legally purchase Django's wife. And then, you're not even, I guess they were just not going to bother coming back for the others, but there's nothing illegal about that. Or maybe they would just send him a letter saying, oh, our finances, we can't really afford that. I now find that I cannot afford a slave of, 12,000, I just can't afford it, I do apologize. I could even see his character kind of writing that off. So, even this whole scheme that this con they try to work is a completely legal con. Although you do kind of wonder why they just don't kind of ride up and go, hi, I'm a German doctor. I heard from around that you have a German slave. I really want someone to converse with. I'll give you twice her worth. Because it does seem like they could have just rode up on this place and just offered, like, I heard around one of your girls speaks German. I really want a German. She's worth, I think they say in the movie she's worth $300. I'll give you $1,000 for a $300 slave just because I want someone to speak German with. Jamie Foxx, again, I think I've talked a bit about him in his performance. He's laid back. He's not laid back. He's opposite of laid back. But a really good performance. Interesting how we have that transition to him, where you kind of see him become this bounty hunter. Although it isn't as slow as I think it could have been, or as gradual, because he kind of goes on his first kills, which are more kills of revenge when he goes after the brothers. And then he has his actual first kill where he's got to shoot basically an escaped murderer in front of his son. And then after that, it's just kind of like he becomes the character he is for the rest of the movie. And who else? Oh, and then you have Samuel Jackson, who plays basically the Uncle Tom. He's the head slave at the plantation, and very loyal to his masters. And at the end becomes like the ultimate villain, and maybe that's what the Tarantino's trying to say, is in the end, the ultimate villain is, with these, is when people don't help each other, they kind of screw each other over for their positions of power. So, if that's what he's going for, it works. He's actually the last one to die, and he's kind of a manipulator, you can kind of tell that. And he's surprisingly also kind of really speaks up at his masters a lot. So I had heard he was a bit of a manipulator character beforehand. I'd watched Brad Jones' reviews before seeing the movie, and I didn't think he was as big as a manipulator. I thought he was just, because I was expecting it to be more that he was maybe in a way kind of like secretly, like he had such a hold over DiCaprio's character that he basically was running the plantation. This just made the white guy think so, but really he could easily suggest and convince the guy to do something, and he does do a degree of that. You get the sense maybe that's why he was so loyal, but who knows? And then of course, like I said, you have a ton of different other actors popping up. Zoe Bell, for crying out loud, pops up as a completely almost unseen character. It's one of the random trackers. Savini's in there. Where I got the list here. Yeah, Zoe Bell. Huh. A lot of classic Tarantino actors. Walter Goggins plays one of the head people, or one of the head slave masters in there. Quentin Tarantino shows up with an Australian accent. Tarantino, I think, also put on some weight. Oh god, and there's what's the name of this guy? He's actually the first kill of the movie. Second kill being a horse. Yeah, they shoot a horse right in the head, and that's the other thing I got to talk about. First, let me find out what his actor's name. God, he was the replacement Raiden, as I like to call him. You know what I mean by that is it James Russo? Yeah, James Russo. I think that's who we're talking about here. Let me double check. Let's see what he did in the 90s. I'm trying to remember the character's name. He was. Maybe not. I'm not seeing a Mortal Kombat credit here. I don't know, but he was in Mortal Kombat Annihilation. He played. He was the guy they brought in to play Raiden, and I forgot the goddamn it. Now all right, I'm going to pause the recording here for a second just to find out who this guy is. James Remar. He's one of those actors you don't know their name, but once you see the movie, you're like, I've seen you in other things. He was in that. He's been in quite a few. He's one of those actors I immediately spot. He's also got a distinctive voice. He's also originally supposed to be the guy that played Hicks in Aliens. Just saying. So, now that we've got that out of the way, let's get back to the next thing I was talking about. This is one of the bloodiest movies I've seen in a while, and I've seen Dead Alive. It's not quite Dead Alive. I don't think anything has ever been to Dead Alive levels. I showed friends Dead Alive, and they've been looked at me kind of weird afterwards because they didn't think anything like that could exist. And then I tell them, this is the same guy that did Lord of the Rings, by the way. But I digress. Um, it's got a high level of violence, but yet considering what it's imitating and what's paying homage to, it'd be an insult not to. But my God, like some of the people in there, like they have freakishly high blood pressure. Is all I can say. Because when they shoot them, they pop like cherries. Really, really, really juicy cherries. Even the horses. Ooh, I mean, blood. I guess it must have been. It's almost like I feel like they've been using all the CGI blood because Quentin Tarantino's been hoarding it up somehow. But yeah, somebody gets shot, they just like the entire room turns red. Don Johnson, when he gets shot, he just goes. His horse just like goes white to like red. Like they just went up with like a couple gallons of paint and just dumped the red paint all over this horse. Although I will say one thing about the gore, they did one thing. They also did the bullets hit with the force of a freight train, and it's to a character I don't think deserved it. They have a Calvin Candy, Leonardo DiCaprio's character, has a sister, and like this actually somewhat caught me off guard. Because the sister really hadn't done anything I deserved. She just needs to die. She kind of just lives on the plantation, and you don't. I guess maybe because she was very willing to just send up Django's wife to. I guess they assumed like this, have sex with Schultz. So Schultz said he wanted to have someone speak German with him, but Broomhilda. That's about the only thing I can think of. Other than that, she's a white girl that lives on a plantation. Yeah, as a character, you didn't feel like she really deserved to die. But I guess you're kind of having that. In that, maybe that's a bit of a. Tarantino remembers blaxploitation movies in which basically if you're a white guy, unless you did something to really prove yourself, you go with the assumption that the white guy's bad and deserves to get shot. But that's how those movies were. If you doubt me, go watch some of them. Some of them are ridiculous too. I could think. I actually have a couple here. I've got a couple of the classics because I'm just the kind of crazy person that has a really, really diverse film collection. But I digress. There's my. If this ever becomes popular enough where I need to make, I get to sell T-shirts, that's going to be one of my T-shirts. But I digress. Yeah, I really didn't feel like at first like he's pointing the gun. He's kind of cornered him after the funeral for Candy, which for such a powerful slave owner, or for a plantation owner, you figured there'd be a bigger funeral. I don't know, but he kind of pins down the remaining people that I guess would know who they. Well, I'll get into this for a second. And he kind of tells the two slave girls, say goodbye to Miss Candy. And they're like, what? Say goodbye to Miss Candy. Goodbye? And then he just blows her away, and she like, flies across the room for her. At first, I really thought that, I was kind of thinking, did those girls like kind of give up his wife? So maybe, because I was thinking, well, she hasn't really done anything in this movie. She's just kind of sat back. So is he gonna like, I'm trying to think, I was thinking here, like, alright, she doesn't seem to do anything. She's about to kill the two slave girls because they kind of screwed over. Because you're kind of associating these two girls a bit. Like, one has basically been Calvin's, like, mistress. And, like, is fully fine with everything. Really doesn't care much. And then, of course, you had the other one that's, like, the head house worker, and I was trying to think if they had done anything, and really, if he probably could have killed both of those girls too, and it'd have been fine. But he has those two run out and kills her. I mean, the handlers, yeah, you can see Steven, which is Samuel L. Jackson's character, Certainly, because he was the one that basically pointed everything out. Uh, Basically took after Candy was killed, basically took control and forced Django into surrender, and was the one that thought of Django's punishment. But so you were waiting for him to die, and you enjoyed that death. Well, I don't know. I don't know about the hers. Maybe if he just killed everybody, I wouldn't have mind. I don't know. That's one of those sticking points. I'm like, eh. But it works if you want to go with the, because like Django shoots, kneecaps Steven, and he kind of leaves. He's got a bunch of dynamite. He's just gonna blow up the house. He leaves it as lets Steven kind of sit there and sulk as he's actually shouting out insults at him. He's kind of saying, "No, they're gonna hunt you. There's gonna be bounty hunters coming for you now." And you're kind of wondering, well, okay, by killing the least, you couldn't believe that he would have gotten away with this with the white girl dead. But I could maybe believe that he goes back to doing bounty hunting, and like no one really ever knows what happens to the Candies, what happened there, because the place blows up. Anyone involved, all the trackers and handlers have been shot or killed, and all of the slaves already assumed that he was sent back to was punished and sent away. So outside of that, which would have really helped if he had killed those two, the two other slave girls who were kind of working with, again, kind of more of the Souths, kind of, you could maybe argue, were a bit of more of the Uncle Toms. Well, he's killed all the witnesses, so there's no one to really ever report what happened there. Because when he gets sent to this, he's supposed to be worked to death in this mine. And you kind of get the sense, as he's talking to these guys, that there is no record of him. So the people on the plantation assume he's already been killed, and if there's no witnesses left, there's no record of him ever being there. So there's no telling what happened. And you could, I guess you can just assume that the two slave girls, no one ever bothered asking them. Ran themselves to freedom. But yeah, and of course this is a Tarantino film. I should also mention, yeah, the N-word gets used a lot, but then again, you would expect it to get used a lot. The fuck gets said a lot, though, more than you would probably expect from an accurate timepiece. But you know, look how accurate Inglourious Basterds was, so I'm not expecting much from this. But an interesting look. I think I don't know how accurate all the aspects were from slavery. Like, there were certain masks they wore. I would not be surprised if they did, like, there's like these weird chain masks that they have some of the slaves wear when you're like selling them and moving them. I think that could be something he like looked up and found true, because there are some weird tidbits in there that are like accurate. Like, there's this weird 3D imager, basically Zoe Bell, who you don't see her face ever. She's like she's ninja'd up. She's looking at, and I do know that thing is actually true, that they actually had these projectors that would kind of show a 3D image. So there might be weird little tidbits in there that are actually true. Like, they might be wearing them. But there's other things, like, I don't think most slaves were considered as expendable as they're showing them back then, because they cost a lot of money. Which is what always was the joke, like, kind of luck of the Irish, is they basically, one of the reasons he imported the Irish was they weren't slaves, therefore you only paid them a few pennies. If they died, you weren't out anything. In fact, you didn't even have to pay them. But I also wouldn't be surprised to learn some of the expendability of slaves. So, anything else? Let's try to think. There's, of course, a lot you can talk about with this movie. There's so many scenes. There's a lot of. I mostly talked about near the ending. I haven't talked that much about the earlier parts in the movie, which were enjoyable. again, they had with the historical accuracy, it seems like most of the people were like, they were really shocked. There's a black guy riding a horse. Especially in Texas, I believe that was quite common. There was an awful large number of freed slaves that would do that type of stuff. So people, especially in Texas, they wouldn't be that surprised. There are certainly restrictions on African Americans. Don't get me wrong there. But out in the western areas, there was, of course, plenty of free slaves. That's the only place they could go for get land. Plus, there was also these. I think especially down there, especially when there's cattle, like certain slaves were kind of trusted. They didn't think about running, so you would see them walking around. But they are trying to make a point, and it's a Tarantino film, so you're not worried too much about historical accuracy. You're really not going in with that, so it's really a nitpick that I started to say that, and I kind of smacked myself away, going, no, this is a Tarantino film. We're not getting hung up on historical stuff here. This is the guy that had Hitler get killed like 2 years earlier in World War II in a fucking theater in Paris, shot up by a couple of angry Jewish soldiers. So we're not going to complain on that. It breaks the spirit of the movie, which that kind of also points to what if we're looking at spaghetti westerns. A lot of times they had a bit of a racial criticism in there for because this was the 60s, and even though they were Italian movies, there was still a lot of times a talk of the wrongness of discrimination, because that was a big issue back then, especially in the 60s. So they would oftentimes put more issues of the 1960s and put them into the Old West. But I think I've gone on quite enough. I think we're at like 40 minutes here or something. There's still a lot to talk about with this movie. You've seen it. Start a conversation below in the comments. Talk about what you like, what you didn't like, what you didn't like about my review. And of course, as always, please subscribe, like, share, post to different forums, all that fun stuff. Or don't. So that is it for now. That's probably going to be the last movie I see this year in theaters, considering I only have like 2 days. I really only have 2 days left, and New Year's Eve I have to work. So expect my year in retrospect to come out soon. I might catch Jack Reacher. Maybe not. I have a feeling that's going to be one that says this falls out and you just never bother seeing. And Zero Dark 30. Expect me to. I'm definitely going to see that one. There's not a whole lot coming out in January. It looks really fantastic. So Zero Dark 30 is going to probably be the first movie of the year. Hopefully that'll be a good one. It's gotten some criticism from people in the CIA saying, no, that's not accurate. And I could easily see that happening, but that's a discussion for that review. Also, I plan on doing a review of the book Neuromancer. I finished reading that. It's just getting around to recording it. I actually recorded half of the review for that, and then I realized that my headset was in the wrong position again. So the audio sounded really crappy, and I just dumped that entire recording. So, well, let's try to keep this under 45 minutes. So that's it for now. Stay tuned for that stuff. Signing out.